I feel like there should be more news, but I guess it's just slow time before E3, huh?
Yeah, I mean, we got a couple things. What do we got there for news?
It's still a test show. So
yeah, and it's still part brainstorm.
I'm thinking what would happen is if this was the case with a regular day,
Mm-hmm.
we would be searching like crazy. That's all.
Yes.
Like and stories that wouldn't be normally like high level stories like LA Noire overheating PS3s. Like that story was actually a big news story in general.
Yeah.
Let alone.
I mean, there's like Xbox Dash update.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's been some stuff,
And
but it
whole,
feels like.
You could also, if you wanted to stretch, there's the free
Yeah.
Xbox 360 promotion, right?
Yeah.
Like that on if you buy a PC, and then there's the what's the other free Xbox 360?
You know, and I guess I think the Sony getting hacked story that we did. If this was a real episode, we would reiterate the Sony getting hacked
Yeah.
again.
And that's the thing. I didn't want to pile up too much on
yeah.
the stuff that seems like, again, especially as we're keeping it kind of looser here. Plus, once we start involving guests and interviews and all that
once
stuff.
we boot me out of here, there'll be some real stuff in here. It's going light for me. Trust me.
Yeah. No, this is definitely.
Oh, this is kind of cool. The T2T2 in the chat room just sent us a Giant Bomb article, a professor's decision to teach Portal.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Where basically somebody's offering a class. I don't know what the rest of the story is, though. I'd have to read it, which means I'd have to not go to the bathroom. So instead, I'm going to go to the bathroom.
He could bring a smart device to the bathroom, but that's his choice.
Now, I'll tell you the hardest thing for today was finding some LA Noire clips to show that didn't have massive amounts of swearing or nudity.
So you have to find like the TV.
No, I mean, I wanted to find some gameplay footage though. You know, so I found one section that we could show, and Alex, just so you know, in the notes, it's the one where I talk about the questioning suspects one. That one we can do with sound. The general gameplay one, I would probably.
So wait, which one?
The second one. The
Video
second one's
questioning suspects?
Yeah, that I found one we could use with sound for the start of that.
Okay. How about can you mark the for the show, the majority of videos, do you think they're going to be with or without sound?
Depends.
So I think the second one,
like if you should mark it,
I just marked
has
it
sound
now.
or mark it if it doesn't have sound.
Okay.
Which
video of questioning suspect, no sound. General gameplay is fine.
The questioning one is with sound. The general gameplay is the no sound.
Right, but I'm wondering if it's better to just mark the ones only that have no sound or mark the ones that have sound as.
Okay.
I don't know depends which is the less common one.
Well, it depends because sometimes we'll just want to show something, but other times it's like, you know how we did last week where we're just playing footage while we're talking about it? Yeah, exactly.
Okay, how about if it's B-roll, just write B-roll or something.
Perfect.
And like the box to the right.
Yeah. That was the thing. So I had to go through and like watch all of this. It was very hard to find one that was just like a good stretch without some salty language. Yeah. Which is good for Rockstar keeping the string of going. I think the only times I've ever heard the C word used in video games, Rockstar.
Only in Rockstar?
I think there was one other.
Whoa.
One other one.
Which C word? I mean, the male or female?
The female.
Okay.
It seems in Rockstar titles. That's where I tend to hear that in video games if I had to pick a streak. You know?
You're telling me Nintendo doesn't do it?
Yeah.
You believe that? Not in Super Mario Brothers.
No, I mean, LA Noire, same thing with like Red Dead Redemption or GTA. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're doing serious MA,
yeah, I mean,
mature games.
They're pushing the envelope on a lot of things.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
Open world stuff, just in general, is kind of,
Yeah.
And plus, if it gets us to talk about it, it's a big deal.
Totally. Oh, Brian, did you send that tweet? I'll retweet you.
Oh, yes. Here. Sorry. I was not live tweeting my bathroom excursion. Oh, wait. Oh, I messed it up. Repair my tweet. I misspelled
Live.tweet.tv.
I was too fast for my own good.
Try again.
Like you fail at life, Brushwood.
I've had so many times where I've just had to delete and then retweet something. Yeah. And especially because with editing, you try and think of the best way to say something in 140 characters or less.
So you should introduce a new Twitter API where you have an undo.
Yeah.
Like, no. Because the worst thing is, like, it actually shows up in feeds. Like, people have you like, great. Now they saw my stupid tweet and my smart tweet.
It's not so much misspelling, though. It's just like, oh, man, I could have worded that a little better, For me, I'm kind of a verbose kind of guy, so it's very hard for me. But it's good. It's a good exercise to get in the habit.
Oh my gosh, let me tell you, I think that in many ways, Twitter is one of the best writing exercises I've ever dealt with. It forces you to be very
concise.
Well, not just concise, but but pithy. You got to be clever, and it forces you to convey a lot of emotion and information in a very few well-selected words.
Twitter for life would be nice, I think. Just for email.
Okay.
Lots of retweeting. Good.
Cool. Oh, Brian, I was going to ask you, I only heard part of Frame Rate this week. So are you going to do another NSFW draft around the fall TV season?
Well, we tried putting that together last year, but part of the problem is how do you gauge it? You gauge it based on Nielsen numbers or ad dollar revenues, or it's like, how do you compare? Sort of unfair because you got networks versus cable and that kind of stuff. We got to figure out the right index to judge it on. But I mean, I'd be totally down for it. And Dan Dirks is a freaking wizard for putting together these spreadsheets that automatically update and write themselves to tell everyone how they're doing.
I think ratings are interesting, but also just sort of last show standing, because so many of the new series, it's interesting.
Oh, that's a great idea. So it's like, let's say you got you got 60 episodes and you just see how many of them are going to stand. And so that's what you do. Yeah. It's like the mid-season cancellations is what you're betting on.
Yeah. What makes it the longest?
It's just a long-term kind of thing.
And that way you also
season.
Right. But compared to like the movies where you can actually see week by week and you have something.
Well, but shows get canceled, I mean, right off the bat.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to be out. Think about it. If you have like 5 series, you could be out of the game.
Yeah, but everybody's going to pick
3.
like a certain NBC slot. Like, what is it, Thursday still?
Oh, but it's so tough, though, because TV is so messed up right now. Like, if you look at the landscape of it, I mean, think about if you had to predict right now which of the new shows are going to make it to even mid-season. I mean, I don't think there's any surefire winners.
Well, and there's no way to link it because like the stuff that I'm most excited about probably is most likely to get canceled. Right now, of everything we looked at Frame Rate, Alcatraz and Terra Nova have my interest the most. And the odds are that maybe one of them will last past one season.
Yeah. I mean, I just think it's interesting as an exercise, sort of. Well, I love predictions.
I like that idea a lot. It wouldn't be as exciting on a day-to-day basis and that you wouldn't see physical traction one way or the other, but it would be awesome in that, it'll be news when they start dropping like 5.
I bet there's Vegas odds on cancellations of shows that we could update day by day.
I think it'll be really fun for the first couple weeks as stuff is premiering to kind of see because you really aren't going to know what you've got until the shows actually air. I think it gives people more of a vested interest, I think.
I'm just thinking though, like that first episode, that pilot of all the new episodes are always like,
Yeah, well, I think episode 2 or 3
episode 2 is really when you get to get an idea, and 3 you have, unless the company's decided to air them out of order, which happens a lot.
Yes, it does.
So you're very, very unsure exactly how the show is going to be.
Yeah.
So we got a show. Is it 4:00?
It's 4:05. It's 4:05. Okay,
it's 4:05,
we should get going
and what are we doing,
recording
guys?
Whenever you're ready.
Oh no. Okay.
Hey, I've got a link here to the controversy. I haven't seen it. I don't know if this is somebody commenting over the news or what, but this appears to be a link to the local news story about Portal 2.
Yeah, that's I got somebody's recording of the first one. They did 2 stories on it, so I grabbed the first one because the first one's kind of funnier.
The newscast?
Yeah, the first newscast one. The second one talks about the controversy.
Is it this one?
Yeah, it's that one.
Okay, all right. Well, as long as you have it, then I'm not worried about it.
That's what it is. Okay, so welcome everybody to the TWiT game show Brainstorm, episode 0.3.
0.3.
Wait, what about calling it Master Control? And we could just put a big face of the Master Control program on there. Because it's controls, Master Control, like you're in charge over everything.
If it's not taken,
he dies playing.
The second you say something, we're like, we gotta search on. Is it gone? Is it gone? Oh, the URL's gone. So maybe.
But I like if we could get it. I like that.
Master Control right now, the tentative name looks like it's at the controls.
It looks like tentatively it's at the controls.
Which is a play on at the movies.
Yes.
Because this is a show where we look at video games.
From the perspective of people at the controls.
Exactly.
Yes. Very simple and straightforward. I'm Glenn Rubenstein.
I'm Iyaz Akhtar.
I'm Brian Brushwood.
And we're going to talk about some news this week. We're going to talk about some games that came out, and we're going to speculate a little bit on things. But we're also going to have some brainstorming because this is a very organic, evolving format that we're still getting together before the official show launch, which will be over the summer, post E3, once we're in the new TWiT studio.
Yeah, so if you like things about the show, you don't like things about the show, give us an email at twitgameshow@gmail.com, and then we'll try to work with you.
Indeed. Let's start off with a news story that I thought was kind of interesting because it sort of signifies to me where video games are at right now, if this is the controversy that people are talking about. I mean, controversy has pretty much dogged video games as long as I've been playing them.
Video games ruin children,
Yeah, well, we'll start with that. Originally, video games ruin children. Then it's like, what about these violent video games? And it was about, what about the sexual content in video games? And I think now we're at a nice evolved state where people are looking at the humor in video games.
Actually looking at the content of the game.
Yeah, and if that's if something that can be almost considered, I don't know, not a trivial aspect or element of the game, but something that's almost, you know, like a mere off line of dialogue or two, and if that's enough to generate controversy, on one hand, it's a little silly perhaps, but on the other hand, it's kind of, I don't know, to me it says something nice about where video games are as an art form and a medium, if this is now the point of what we're nitpicking about in terms of the criticism.
The phrase nitpicking is good because this is about Portal 2, not exactly known as a controversial game whatsoever. Apparently there's some language about adoption and making fun of certain individuals who don't have parents, and looks like local news outlets have picked up on this.
Because local news outlets live for controversy.
Well, yeah, I mean,
or to generate.
Is this game making fun of your children? News at 11.
Yeah, right? Let's look at this story. This was done by WBTV from Charlotte, North Carolina. There's a CBS affiliate, and this is a story they did about Portal 2. Mild spoiler alert if you haven't gotten this far in the game.
Mild.
We have discovered a popular video game making fun of adoption. And tonight, a father is shocked at the insensitivity he says he witnessed. Here's the clip.
What's wrong with being adopted? Lack of parents.
You are adopted, and that's terrible.
The game is called Portal 2, and it's only been available for about a month. Brigida Mack just talked to the father who shared this, who saw this with his daughter.
Yeah, I bet he was shocked and really surprised by something like this.
Yeah, no idea, particularly because this is a game that builds itself as educational. It's rated E for everyone. As we said, Neil Staple was playing the game with his 10-year-old adopted daughter when they saw the clip tonight. He says he and his wife are still searching for a way to try to explain it.
I didn't know what to do. I still don't know what to do.
Neil Staples still can't believe what he heard while playing the video game Portal 2 with his 10-year-old adopted daughter, Zoe.
I'm sorry for laughing, but some of this seems like there was a time I was like, I'm watching an Onion story.
Onion or Daily Show, kind of. He was shocked. He's still shocked. His monocle fell out of his eye.
You let them finish digging that grave for themselves. You keep roll that tape.
Yeah, roll the rest of
the story.
Yeah.
Never hidden the fact Zoe is adopted.
She's Chinese. She obviously doesn't look like us.
They wanted to wait until she was ready to talk about it.
It throws the question, the most ultimate question that child is ever going to have for you. And it just throws her right in the living room.
Shocked at what he'd heard, Neil immediately cut the game off, hoping Zoe hadn't heard the cruel joke from a video game billed as educational and appropriate for everyone 10 and up.
And it says rated E for everybody. And I was thinking maybe it's rated E for everybody except for orphans. If you're not an adoptive parent, it's probably not that big a deal to you. If you are an adoptive parent, it was literally the worst thing that I could possibly have heard.
But did Zoe hear it?
She's sticking to her guns that she didn't hear it, and to me that message means she's not ready to talk about it, and I'm not going to force it.
Now what do I do? Put a portal there.
Until she is, Neil says they steer clear of that part of the game and hope their daughter never feels like she's any less because she's adopted.
I can't imagine my life without her. I mean, she's just such an awesome child. She's just made our lives so much better.
Now, again, we did say this game was educational, and it's because you have to sort of figure out a way to get out of every single room. We did contact Sony, who distributes the game. They told us to contact Valve, the company that actually created the game. I did. We have not heard back from them.
Yeah, passing the buck on to somebody else.
Certainly seems that way. But I do want to add that they still like the game. It's just that one part that he says he feels is unacceptable.
Like, I think Sony was kind of busy with something else at that time, by the way. And if this is literally the worst thing that could be heard by an adopted kid, I'm kind of surprised that the worst thing. On top of that, do you think that the local news coverage didn't make the kid feel a little bit weirder?
Yeah, it's kind of. I mean, where do I begin with this?
That's the beginning.
Okay, well, first off, Portal 2 has some jokes. Not just at the expense of the adopted thing. I mean, there's some jokes about Shell's weight as a larger size American. You know, I don't take offense at that when I hear that game. I can see if I were a kid, maybe it would be sort of a little like, hey, maybe that's a low blow. But GLaDOS is supposed to be, you know, not exactly a nice character.
So it's the villains who are saying these negative things.
I mean, it's just sort of a taunt. And this is sort of speculation spoiler I want to get into right now. If you look on Reddit, there's been a lot of threads about this because if you go deep into the game, you see some pictures of Cave Johnson with his assistant Caroline, which, spoiler alert, can we play the sound?
Yes, we can.
Spoiler alert.
Cave Johnson, the founder of Aperture Science, his assistant Caroline, we later find out is essentially had her personality transplanted and digitized into GLaDOS. If you look at a picture of the two of them and you look at how Caroline looks, some people on Reddit have speculated actually that Shell might actually be the daughter of Caroline, who is essentially given up because perhaps of the controversy about Cave Johnson sleeping with his assistant. And so it kind of even brings this different context into why GLaDOS would sort of, you know, because GLaDOS does sort of taunt you sort of like a cruel passive-aggressive mother in a way, or almost even overtly hostile at times. And a lot of people on Reddit have sort of read that into the game, you know, as part of the story and part of what has that little bit of tension between them.
Where, like, in her own twisted way, she's just, I'm just trying to push you to be the best that you possibly can, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So there's sort of, you know, this underlying tension between them. And I think that's where perhaps, I mean, you know, it's not explicitly stated, but that might be one of the motivations for it. Personally, I didn't think that the adoption humor was particularly funny. I mean, don't get me wrong. You know, offensive jokes, if they're
no. Okay, look, let's face it. You know, by the way, you're adopted is so low on the offense joke meter. I mean, that is fourth grade. Everybody calls everyone else adopted or whatever. Here's the thing. This person's story, and they did a good job in this news story of trying to make it about this man's experience with his adopted daughter. And I understand it genuinely was awkward for him and his daughter, but to blame the medium is just asinine. And it's also lazy because I don't see any news stories about the two of them sitting down to read Oliver Twist and having, you know, the adoption issue thrust in her face at an inappropriate time. It's a habit for us to immediately try to blame the medium when it's new and novel and not well understood. You know, for example, it used to be trashy horror novels written in the 1950s. Then it was comic books. Then it was pen and paper role-playing games. Then it was violent video games. And now it's like we're so run out of stories that finally we need to call it an adoption joke in Portal 2 as a controversy. It's understandable and it's almost predictable. And I do empathize with the guy.
Oh,
but
definitely.
As far as, you know, and I mean, what were they supposed to do? You know, it's just
what
like,
if
you know,
her
warning.
school puts on a production of Annie, and then she feels bad that she was not adopted by a wealthy business tycoon.
Well, musicals in general are evil, so that's okay, right? So can you imagine if a video game company like retaliated for something like this or something negative about them?
Which brings us to our next story, which is High Voltage, the software company. They're distributed by Sega, I believe. Has retaliated for a bad review that they got on joystick.com. And essentially what happened was the author gave, which was the game title again? It's not coming up for me right here.
This is Conduit 2.
He did a review of it, and he mercilessly trashed the game. And so apparently a internal email was sent out by an executive to people at High Voltage, saying that, you know, they should sort of repay the favor when they found out that the Joystick reviewer had some works that were published on Amazon, and they went and left some pretty critical reviews of the reviewer's book on Amazon in retaliation for the negative review of Conduit 2.
Yeah, they're pretty much a lot of one-star reviews calling the book below fan fiction garbage as well. Basically, you know, trashing a reviewer for reviewing their game so poorly. And the executive who sent out the email was kind of sent out like an apologetic. My mind wasn't in that dark a place when I wrote that. In fact, I seriously considered buying the book myself. So
okay, I've got a question for you guys. is this fair game? Is this clever retaliation? Is this a case where jerk critic gets his comeuppance, or is this like truly a morally bad thing that everyone did? Because understand, like, when you're a critic, the reason you don't engage in this kind of thing haphazardly is because it ruins your credibility as a critic. But these people, they don't have any credibility. They're just people who, they got their game crapped all over, and so they want to go and lash out, and this was a place to go out and do it. Is it fair game, or who is at fault and for what?
I mean, on one hand, as a reviewer and as someone who's done game reviews for a number of years, there's always sort of an urge or an impulse when you have a really bad game to kind of take the review to another level. Essentially the idea that you could write a review about, and we used to say this when I worked at CNET Game Center, which is, if you're talking about a game that's boring or a game that's not very good, that doesn't mean that the review can't be well written or entertaining to read. And so I definitely understand that there is something appealing at times about looking at a horrendous game and just ripping it to shreds in a very clever way. And that's an impulse that a lot of reviewers have given into over time. I've been guilty of that in the past.
Well, here's what I like about the one response that we got from the chat room. Code to Joy says, this is morally bad. They didn't read the book, but he did play the game. And I think that's a pretty good decision. And I could see that. Yeah. However, this has to be kind of satisfying for anybody who's ever been trashed by a review, whether it be fair or unfair or whatever. I don't know. That had to feel good for everybody at the studio.
There's always a danger when you go ahead and do anything like this. That means, hey, look, I can get under these guys' skin. I'm going to hit them with bad reviews again, and they'll try something dumb. And instead of having the product stand on its own, if the game is really good, then other reviews will completely flood this one bad one out. They should stand on their own 2 feet in their game. To do this kind of thing, to retaliate.
It makes the company look bad.
Exactly.
By far. But
it's not the business of them to make. They make games. They don't control what people say about it.
Well, and I would say, though, it's a weird and small world that we live in. I didn't experience once. I won't get too much into it, but back in the mid-'90s, when there was a glut of full-motion video games that came out, I was particularly savage towards one company's games and what I believe labeled the crap that they unloaded on the public. And
who was it?
I don't want to talk about
Company X.
Come on, you can tell.
No, because let me get to the second part of the story. So a couple of years later, my band that I was in for 7 years, we won a sizable recording contract with a company. Things were going really well, and then once we got a little higher through the ranks, it turned out the president and CEO of that company that we won the recording contract from had been the president and CEO of the company that had made the games that I had just railed upon, and apparently he remembered. He remembered specifically, and it made things a little more than icy and slow going with our business dealings. So I would say that, you got to think about being fair and excessive, but I think if you're excessive to the point that people particularly remember the things that you said in a very biting and cutting way, you never know. You never know who you're going to run into or be doing business with in some other way. That made me think a little twice, not about levying what I think is a fair criticism against a game, but doing it in such an over-the-top fashion that you kind of become the poster boy for the groundswell of hatred against titles that you're the one that they point to.
Yeah, maybe you don't want to retaliate. Maybe you don't want to write such scathing reviews. There could be some kind of middle ground there.
I think you should be fair, but don't. I don't know. I think if you make it to the point that people feel almost bullied by it, I think people are gonna, you're going to see more instances like this. And we have, I think, in limited examples in other media. I mean, we've seen, somebody, maybe not in this case where it's like a company-wide email or memo, but these situations where, people at the company do get a little ticked off at things like this.
Speaking of ticked off.
It was Seventh Guest Part 2, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't.
He's never gonna. He's not gonna say it on air.
I don't want to talk about because
it was Man Enough. The one where you pick up the chicks.
I resolved everything with this person in this company. It took quite some time, but we did resolve things amicably down the line.
Now, looking back on it, do you feel like you were unfair? Is it a case where, because obviously you were in a position where you wanted to see it from the other side's point of view, did you look back and were like, man, I really was harsh on that?
I think that I maybe didn't need to pile it on as much as I did in terms of every time. I mean, this was every time that I was talking about sort of the crap that were full motion video games, I was bringing up this company and just going on, doing some mocking. And I'm sure I'll talk about these games at some point in the future, because now, knock on wood, I'm not going to have to deal with these people anymore. But I think that at the time, it was very easy to sort of be and this was at a time, remember that when full motion video games came out, we all sort of bought into that hype.
Like when Sega CD and that kind of stuff?
Exactly.
Well, speaking of bad press, there's this other small company out there called Sony. They've gotten into a lot of trouble. The PlayStation Network's been down for a while.
Yes.
And it actually came back up after 26 days, and then some other thing happened on the web. But there's reports out there that on the 24th, the 24th, the PlayStation Store will return to the PlayStation Network.
And that's according to Gama Sutra. They're saying that according to an internal memo that's been sent out to developers, that May 24th is the date. So I'm really looking forward to this happening, just because at the very last moment I changed my my L.A. Noire pre-order from the Xbox 360 back to the PS3 once PlayStation PSN was back online.
Right. Some of the services came back up from the get-go. Yeah. Curiosity and a whole bunch of them did come up, but the PlayStation Store, where you can buy online video and that kind of content.
Yeah, and where you can get DLC. I mean, for instance, there's an exclusive case for L.A. Noire for the PS3 that I can't download until that store's back up online.
So it's looking like
Tuesday.
Well,
the good news is that PS3 is done with its negative publicity. They've dealt with that whole hacker issue.
Nothing bad will ever happen again.
No more bad publicity with anything related to the PS3, right?
Ever. Except there are reports that L.A. Noire apparently, combined with the PlayStation 3, could lead to overheating PS3s.
Yeah.
Now,
Sony,
originally L.A. Noire had something up. The company that makes L.A. Noire, Rockstar, had something on their site saying it was due to 3.6.1, the firmware upgrade to the PS3. But quickly that was removed, and now they have a joint statement saying that it has nothing to do with the game or the firmware. So they haven't said they're looking into it. They're not saying what caused it. But they're saying that PS3's not doing so well with L.A. Noire. Apparently, the older systems, the PS3 Fat, like the 60 gigabyte and the 80 gigabyte ones, are the ones that are really affected.
Which is interesting because, that's what I have. I have one of the first PS3s. I bought it right when it was first released. And, I haven't had any problems, which I guess transition us to talking about L.A. Noire, which is our big game of the week.
That's going to be the big game?
That is the big game of the week.
The biggest game.
The biggest game.
Yeah.
I think that, and that's what's interesting about it. Part of the reason why I switched my pre-order back to the PS3 from the Xbox 360, Xbox 360 version comes on 3 DVDs.
Right, because they have very small discs versus the Blu-ray discs that are on.
And you have to swap throughout the game. And I spent some time with the Xbox 360 version over the weekend at a friend's who'd gotten an early copy of it. And with that, the disc swapping, it was just, it wasn't like in the middle of the game. It wasn't like you drive to one neighborhood and then you're switching the disc. It was more case-based. So I think that the world environment is on each disc, but just the specific cases and the animation and cutscenes.
Now, you've been playing this game for a lot of hours.
This has been my week. Been my week.
Do you think that the episodic nature of the game, does it matter that it's on 3 DVDs on a Xbox 360 versus a PlayStation 3 that has the Blu-ray disc?
No, it's for me it was a convenience factor, and then also the fact that the game was originally developed as a PS3 exclusive and then was ported to the 360. But I think if you're dual platform or multi-platform, the thing that sealed the deal for me was that the PS3 version has an exclusive case that will only be available on the PS3.
Okay, so what did you think of the actual
now
game?
That we're talking L.A. Noire, can we just jump in? Can I start digging your brain for reviews on this?
Spoilers or anything?
Yeah, there's gonna be some light to mid-sized spoilers here.
So if you haven't played the game, don't pay attention now.
Okay, so you played on PS3, right?
Yes.
And number one, and I'm so upset that Rockstar always seems to drag its feet when it comes to releasing to PC. I don't understand why they're allergic to simultaneous releases on the PC. But so having said that, I have not played the game at all. However, I'm hugely excited about it, specifically for the fact that it's story driven. Now, having said that, is it a case where the moment you put it in, as with many of the BioWare games, you just get sucked into the story immediately? How long did it take for it to get its hooks into you?
It's interesting because the first missions are very much tutorial and sort of setting it up. And at first, I just sort of felt overwhelmed. The best comparison I've seen when talking about the game is don't think of it like an interactive movie. Think of it like an episodic TV series. Essentially, you're watching what feels like three seasons, essentially, worth of a series because it tells a very full and conclusive story. And so you actually have 4 different desks that you play in the game. You start off in just as a patrolman, then you switch to the traffic desk. Or no, pardon me, 5. You have a patrolman, traffic desk, then you switch to homicide, then the vice squad, and then finally the arson squad. So the first mission where you're a patrolman, that's very much the tutorial, where it's walking you through, I think it's 3 or 4 different missions where it's giving you very much the basics in terms of like, this is how you investigate a crime scene. This is how you interrogate suspects, or interview suspects. This is how you get from point A to point B. And I'll say that it was probably during the second part of the game, or the second desk of the game, when you're on the traffic desk, that's when I really started to get going for me. So I would say probably that for the first hour to 2 hours, it's kind of new. It's kind of like, what am I doing here? In fact,
as far as the mechanic goes, I mean, is it a case where you're always watching discussions and deciding where to take things, or is there an action component at all?
Yes, there is. You are essentially, it's free roam in the sense that they have recreated 1947 Los Angeles. They've recreated it with an amazing level of detail. And if you were to look at I think total 8 square miles is what they have there. And I don't know, it was a trip for me just being able, because remember, Rockstar also is notorious for using, Vice City, for using,
fake places.
Yeah, fake places. In this
Versus
case,
this is Los Angeles.
This is real. I mean, there are places I've been that it was really a kick to sort of drive and be like,
I always took it to be a fantasized version of real places. I mean, they say Liberty City, but the last release, I mean, clearly was definitely New York, right down to Times Square and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, but to recreate. There was some competitor to Grand Theft Auto that made a big deal about being exactly the real streets of LA, and by focusing on that, they lost focus of the story. I think Rockstar's position was that they just wanted the story to be number one, not the fact that these are the actual streets.
And that's the thing. I mean, if I had any critique of the game, okay, so essentially you have 21 story-based missions, 21 cases that you're going to take on over the course of this game. That's not including the PS3 exclusive case or the 2 additional cases that were pre-order bonuses that are available as DLC. And apparently there's going to be another one that's coming out in a few weeks. So you have these 21 cases that you take, but then in addition to that, you have 40 side missions that you get. So when you're driving around your car, you'll get a call over dispatch where essentially you can go to a crime in progress. And these change each time until you clear all 40 of them. And they're sort of random, the order that you get them in, where they pop up. Different cases you'll only get under certain ranks. And those are very short. Those are very action-oriented. That's like you show up to some place, there's a bank robbery in process. You've got to go in and shoot 5 guys, and then the last one is going to hightail it out of there. You have to run in your car, chase them down, and essentially knock them off the road.
Okay, so what was the single biggest thing that stood out about this game that you'd never, there had to be, clearly you seemed to like it, but what was it that was novel about this that sucked you in, that you're like, I've never experienced that in a game before?
Okay, well, the acting and the motion capture performance, I think that's sort of a novelty, but it's a worthwhile one to get you into the game. I mean, when you look at the animations that are done in the game, especially during the interrogation scenes and the interview scenes, I mean, you could tell that these are real actors. I mean, there's Aaron Staton from Mad Men that, they essentially did this probably the most lifelike and realistic in terms of facial expression. Some of the body movements I found a little awkward, but I felt that presentation and then the quality of the performance was the first thing that I noticed. And what's interesting about it is they do put an emphasis on the interviewing and the interrogation in addition to the evidence collection. And I believe the reason why is because you're essentially like a police officer. You're judging the answers that you're being given based on eye movements, based on posture, based on body language to sort of determine whether a suspect is lying to you or not.
Now, do they do any training in there, or do they just assume everybody knows how to spot a liar and you have to figure out for yourself to look for the shifty eyes or the awkward posture?
That's actually what I would say was the thing that frustrated me at first, and I think the one drawback towards sort of getting really involved with the game is that they don't ever give you a clear tutorial. I mean, they tell you the basics, essentially, click this if you think they're telling the truth. click this if you have a doubt but you don't have evidence to back up your doubt, or click lie if you know that they're lying and you have evidence in your casebook to point out why you think it's a lie.
So there was never a, you know, it would have been an easy way for them to kind of explain that is if, as part of, you know, the way the story begins, if they brought in some guy from the FBI who was going to give a short presentation about, you know, how to spot a liar or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I relied on, you know, the things that you always sort of read in terms of, you know, people tend to look to the side. People tend to sort of fidget, you know, or based on expression. And what I found is that's usually right. But what's interesting about the game, and this is where it really hooked me, because I played through about 5 or 6 hours of it on the weekend on the Xbox 360 version, and then I went back and played from start to finish on the PS3 this week, is that these cases play out with some pretty substantial differences. So you can't really fail.
Wait, based on platform?
No, based on platform. No, based on what you pick. Basically, if you miss certain pieces of evidence, or if you believe the suspect when they're lying to you, you're not going to find out things. And so the game actually tosses in new ways for you to find the same information. It's very hard to fail at the process. Wow. You get better ranks and better marks for doing very well at it. I mean, there's a lot of cases I completed perfectly, but then it was interesting to go back and see, like, okay, on this, in one case in particular, if I accused an owner of the bar, if I didn't believe what he was saying, he didn't give me a key piece of information. So then later in that same case, I get a call. My character gets a call when they're driving saying that, you know, the victim was spotted at a restaurant later that night, and I went to a totally different location that I hadn't been to before. I had totally different interactions that I hadn't had before, and ended up in an action scene shootout that I totally missed by getting it right the first time.
Well, considering this game is sort of on rails, and that was something that you were concerned about when we talked about this game before, do you think that it has a replayability based on what you're just saying, that if you don't take the clues right away, you could be going a slightly different way?
And that's the thing. I actually am excited to go back, and I did some of it last night after I finished the game. I went back and played some cases where I was like, okay, I'm just going to say truth to everything, you know, and I'm not going to pick up these clues. And it gave me the information in different ways. So in a sense, you're actually getting a longer game and a little bit more content by doing poorly at it.
Okay.
Because if you do well, you're going to have you might get a better outcome in terms of it. And there's some cases where you can charge different people with the crime.
Okay, so if you want a longer playing game, you just act as dumb as possible.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really lose. And in fact,
if you want to like rank really highly,
but that's fine. Look. I mean, I understand that with video games, we're accustomed to the idea of winning and losing. But it's like I don't mind that. I think video games, especially as a storytelling mechanism, need to mature to a level. Like, nobody goes into a movie thinking in terms of whether you win or lose. And it's like, that's part of the fun, is afterwards when I'm discussing the movie with my wife, and they're like, oh, and you totally noticed that they set that ending up when so-and-so said this. She's like, no, I didn't notice that. So it's like, of course, even with passive forms of entertainment, there's things that we miss. And I think the differences are a little more stark in a video game, because it notices when you miss things, and it puts things in there to correct it, to make sure that you pick everything up.
Yeah, I mean, so it's a little choose your own adventure. It definitely is like the Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney games, but a much more stylized version of them.
Is awesome. Yeah, and you could not have sold me faster than mentioning Phoenix Wright.
And I'll tell you, you know what really sold me on the game that I didn't realize until the end, because everyone, when you think of Rockstar, you think about sandbox games. You think about open world. You think about like Red Dead Redemption, where you're going a variety of places
to a fault.
Yeah, and so this isn't that. Because I finished all the 40 side missions last night, and then I was like, well, what do I do now? Like, I've unlocked 75, and it showed that, on my completion, it showed that I was 88% complete, even though I finished the game, did all the side missions, redid a few of the levels, and I've got like 75 out of the 95 vehicles in the game that I've unlocked. And so I'm figuring the other percentage is going back and replaying those cases and getting some stuff different. And getting some different outcomes and towards seeing the different content, which I'm actually curious to do. It's actually fascinating to me when you're interrogating a suspect, the different things that they say and the different, paths that they take you down in terms of based on whether you believe them or not. But here's the thing that people haven't really been saying about this game, is that it occurred to me at the end that this is a modern, and think about this as an old school PC or console gamer, particularly not a PC gamer. I know this is a console game, but this is a $60 million adventure game This is a $60 million LucasArts style, Sierra Online style adventure game.
Well, and I don't want to spoil what, but we'll definitely talk specifically to that in our retro segment.
And so imagine that with an open free roam sandbox wrapper around it, because this is a huge city that they've built here, and all these crimes, all these interviews, all these places, you get to spend time in a lot of this, in almost every nook and cranny of it. They've really meticulously laid this out in terms of, so you're going to see the entire city, and there's just some really fun stuff. I mean, for me, it was a trip just to go to, like Hollywood and Highland, to drive down Gower, to drive down, streets that I drove in Los Angeles when I lived there. And then even to do stuff like go to the viaduct, to go to where that, sort of the where the water is and the white walls for the end race from Greece and those chase scenes from Terminator 2, and just drive the car. I mean, that was just really fun to be able to go to these locations that are real, and be able to play around in them.
We don't have any rating system that we figured out, but 1 to 80 million awesome points. How many points do you give this?
I mean, I'll say this, okay? Even if you didn't like Red Dead Redemption, which I think is one of the best games of last year.
How can you? Even if you don't like Red Dead Redemption, I don't know anyone who didn't like.
But this is why, because Red Dead Redemption had more of an action component to it, and it definitely, I think, was more like GTA in the Old West. Right. But this is the thing. So if you're an old school gamer that loved adventure games, this is going to do it for you.
I think we joked about the actual, is it rent, buy?
I'll tell you.
Avoid. I mean,
I dropped $60 on this. Mm-hmm. I feel like I got my money's worth. And I will say that, I'm not any more of a Rockstar fanboy than most gamers. But, I think I'm like an average level of Rockstar fanboyism. But I think consistently with their sandbox games, almost every title they've put out has been worth the money. I mean, you get your $60 worth, and in this case, even though over the course of 4 days, playing this probably more than I should have, I was able to get through it, even at the 30 hours of playtime, and I've still probably got another 10 left if I go back and want to be complete. So even at 40 hours of playtime with the story, and just to sort of see how they've done this environment to mess around. I mean, I think it's worth the $60.
Shall we move on to the multi-platform Dead Island?
Well, in 1 second, I just wanted to say that also, I think what's going to be really cool about this, though, is what they do as far as the first expansion or sort of big DLC, kind of how Red Dead Redemption did the Red Dead Undead.
You said there's only 21 cases.
And there's another one coming out next month. There's 2 more that are available currently, and there's a PlayStation exclusive one. So there's more to do as far as that goes. One thing that I said, pre-show, is that if my only real gripes with the game is that if this is now a true storytelling medium, and if video games are now at the point of telling story and being an art form and considered as such, then I think it's legitimate to have story gripes, I mean, if we're at that point.
Yeah, that's fine.
And so I had some gripes.
That's a sign of maturity that you would have gripes about the story. One of the comments I really like from the chat room is Audio Murphy says, LA Noire is a watershed in console gaming. The production is immaculate, which I love the idea that it's a game that's so finely crafted that it takes you to a different place. It makes you feel like there's something new that can be accomplished in the medium of storytelling within gaming.
And there's so many. Yeah, it's a huge step forward, and I think that there's going to be a trickle-down effect that we're going to see the production quality sort of raised. It always happens where a game comes out, sort of sets a new standard, and I'm hoping that this does in terms of the production quality, in terms of this is no longer just actors lending their voices. I mean, you're going to spot who you're going to be able to tell who the actor or actress is that's in the game. And I was surprised at some of the people that I recognized. I was calling my wife over where I was like, oh my God, that's Courtney Gaines from Can't Buy Me Love and Back to the Future and Children of the Corn. He's totally playing a pedo. Oh my God. That's totally,
So you think this could be a second life for actors?
Oh, definitely. I mean, there's so many, and half the cast of Mad Men is in this. Like Carla Gallo from Undeclared, I spotted her. Spotted that guy that was in River's Edge who played Jay Leno in the TV movie.
Somebody tweeted me that saying a friend of the NSFW show, Greg Grunberg, was in there. Is that true?
Yes, he is.
Yeah,
and he does a great job. I mean, it's really, really interesting just to watch this game but there's a lot to do in terms of the interactivity. And I know last week I said that was my main concern, was about I was worried that there was going to be limited interactivity. And in this case, no. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can influence the story. There's plenty of action elements that are in there. And in the driving, the handling of these old cars is actually, I mean, it's pretty cool how, you know, easily you could sort of maneuver, because this isn't GTA. You can't go on a rampage, essentially. So you're trying to not do damage. You know, you can't pull out your gun and go on a shooting spree, but it's still a lot of fun. I mean, there are some minor gripes that I have with the story.
The question from the chat room is this the Wing Commander 3 of 2011?
Perhaps.
And I mean that with all love. Wing Commander 3 back in the day, I had a Pentium 90, man. That was the big deal.
Yeah. Oh, no, that was huge. And I think that, you know, it's worth the $60. My only gripe about it is that one of the big arcs of cases, and this is a slight spoiler alert, but it's pretty clear early on that you're not going after the right suspect. I figured out who the actual guy we should be going after was. I figured it out halfway in the second of like 6 cases.
You have to continue to walk through those.
There was no way to just chase down the guy and you know, and collar him. And even when I went back later, I was like, I'm going to go back to the location where, you know, because I was hoping there was some little second time playthrough way that it would just allow you to confront the guy head on, but there wasn't. So that's my only real gripe, is that the story is forced along this idea of sort of convicting, you know, of sort of, well, I mean, they talk about it in Law & Order in every cop show in terms of, you know, making the collar, making the case, rather than who actually did it. It's who we can actually
if you're considering all the actors involved, I mean, if they have to like literally act all the scenarios out, it could get really expensive. At $60 million, they probably have as much game as they can get.
Yeah. I mean, so it's cool, and it's definitely worth picking up.
Awesome.
Moving on. What's next on the schedule?
The multi-platform, we have the new Dead Island teaser.
Yeah.
I want to see this. I haven't seen this at all. And the mere fact that you put it in there, I loved the first Dead Island trailer so much. I mean, it's like, no lie, it gave me goosebumps and made me cry. So whether or not the game is good or not, I am a sucker for video game cinematics. I love video game advertisements. I love the trailers. Every time I put in a new video game, I will sit and watch every single frame of the opening cinematic. So I don't know if you have anything you want to set up for this, why you put it in the list or not.
I put it in just because it's a game that I'm following and I'm anxious about, because I think it looks really cool.
Peggy 18.
Oh, there's that song.
Okay, so we have a zombie killing island thing.
The idea that you're at a resort, you're at a Club Med style resort, and a zombie outbreak happens, and you're essentially trapped in this island. But the cool thing about it is you're going to be able to make combinations of weapons based on different objects that you find around the resort.
Okay, because I was wondering what the hook is. I mean, we've seen a lot of zombie killing games out there.
That's exactly what I wanted to comment on, Iyaz, is that this is a very crowded genre, and it's already been dominated by the likes of course, Left 4 Dead and the new expansion, Call of the Dead, for, wait, which I forget which one it was.
For Call of Duty.
That's right. And, but to carve a niche for itself, it had to do some things different, and they're doing an excellent job of that. They are following in the footsteps of stuff like The Walking Dead, where they're not making the initial stories anything about the zombies. You barely see the zombies in them. I guess it's very prominently featured in the first one, but you don't care about the zombies. You care about the relationship with his father and his daughter. And likewise, you care about the idea of these people. And they're doing a great job of zigging where everyone else is zagging and focusing on the unique gameplay that you're going to get out of Dead Island. I'm going to say this may be the last interesting zombie game of this wave of zombie fever that we're having right now.
Somebody in the chat room called it like it's Sims It's a Sims game pretty much. Sims Resort with zombies.
Well, I think the thing about it is I agree with Brian that I think the zombie genre is beyond played out, but for some reason this game looks really interesting.
What's funny is I'm the first to shout too much. I'm done. Let's get out. And yet I'm sucked in on these. So there's something about the way they're telling the story that's truly engaging, and they're figuring out the right way to tickle the last few neurons that haven't been poked by any other zombie game. And I do think they're taking a lot of their cues from The Walking Dead, and that The Walking Dead TV series is not about the zombies, it's about the living. And I think that they are going to try to do the same thing with Dead Island.
No, and the thing is that I agree with some people in the chat room are saying that they haven't really showed gameplay yet, and I agree. It could all fall apart. I've seen games before where the premise excited me and then the game itself was
But let's face it, we very rarely buy games based on what they are. We buy games on what we hope them to be. For example, I bought Brink because I loved the trailer and I loved everything I was seeing for it, and I bought it. And I've only, I still haven't played it enough to come to a final decision. But after I bought it, the reviews came out and they were not terribly positive, although that was for the console version, not necessarily for the PC game. So from a marketing perspective, this is genius what they're doing, because they're going to get me to buy this game as well.
What's the timeline on this game? And how long has it been in development, and when should we expect this? Because if we're worried about gameplay and we're just seeing trailers, how long are we going to see trailer after trailer after trailer before we start seeing some gameplay and before we could even buy it?
I think there's going to be something playable at E3. That's just a hunch based on the fact that some publications have actually spent a little bit of hands-on time with it already and have said good things about it. I think it was Joysticker Kotaku that had some positive feedback after some hands-on time with it. I mean, it's coming out for Windows, PlayStation 3, and Xbox 360, so it definitely is going to be a cross-platform game. I think, what's the development of it? Just looking at it.
Chat room?
No, it was originally
August 1st, 2011 is what Jim the Fly is telling us.
Yeah. And it was originally supposed to be released in
so they're running out of time.
2008, which is weird.
So it must have been a unique concept then. It's still.
But the thing of it is that look, I'm the first one to just admit a full disclaimer that it could totally suck.
Mm-hmm.
But
trailer looks good.
That being said, it's rare that gaming concepts really excite me at this stage. I'm 35 years old. I've been playing video games 31 years now. So just a mere concept of a game getting me going, not so much in recent years. But with this one, it just sounds like it could be cool. In terms of, the fact that it's a cutscene driven trailer, I mean, that's, That
doesn't bother me. That's you got to speak the language of the medium that you're in.
Yeah.
And no matter how good your video capture is, in fact, even if they want to render things in the video game engine, they'll still use a separate program to render it frame by frame so that it runs completely smooth. That doesn't bother me at all. It's just one medium doesn't translate well to the other.
Although I will say one thing, what we were just talking about with L.A. Noire, I believe all of the cutscenes and everything in there is rendered using the in-game.
Yeah, the commercials themselves actually have a the little tag on the bottom.
It's all gameplay footage. So, I mean...
Right. You're talking about when you play the game, but I'm saying when they show it on television...
Yeah.
It's not that they just ran fraps and then played the game.
Oh, yeah. So, it's definitely something that I'm looking forward to. Let's move on to PC Indie, Brian.
Yeah, dude. Big news came to me out of nowhere. This is like 30 minutes off the digital presses. Fan of the show, Adam12, who is as excited as I am. I know you're not as excited as I am, but he is just as excited to me about Star Wars The Old Republic. We're working on the NSFW Guild, and he said that apparently one of the, I'm trying to actually call it the actual story right here, but apparently one of the beta testers for Star Wars The Old Republic got online and started streaming his playthrough of the game live on Justin.tv. And of course, Justin.tv automatically archives everything that shows up there. So while the video itself has been pulled from Justin.tv, meanwhile, there are torrents of all 2 hours of this video gameplay footage as the guy goes through it. You get to see a bunch of, we should do a minor, actually pretty significant spoiler alert here.
A minor, major spoiler coming up.
It's a minor, major spoiler is what it boils down to. Specifically, and I don't think it even mentions this in the article, but in the email that Adam sent me, he said, among other things, you see the revealing of, here we go. If you want to talk about what happened on the game show, someone relatively new got in the beta testing and streamed playing it on Justin TV at the beginning of the week. Copies of the archive flew across the net, and BioWare immediately jumped on it with a cease and desist action. I had to dig it up on the torrents personally, and it's awesome looking. Footage features character creation and the reveal of a cyborg race, ! Sith Inquisitor, Jedi Knight, and about 10 minutes of smuggler footage. So it's out, and we are reporting the fact that it's out. We're not necessarily encouraging this kind of leak or of you getting it off the torrents. But for someone like me who's as excited as can be for this story and for this format, that's very big news. And I wonder how that's going to affect, number one, the release schedule of information for the folks over at BioWare, and of course, number two, how they're going to present it at E3.
Well, that could be a segment. It could be epic spoiler, as the Mac One in the chat room says. Epic spoiler. When this much of a game is leaked, and you're sure this beta tester must be like stuck in carbonite at this point. There's no way he's getting away with this. This is a very big leak. 2 hours of gameplay.
Yeah, according to the chat room, Duke is saying that there was a bigger leak from the same guy, a total of 6 hours leaked. But to be honest, this is expected. We saw the same thing with World of Warcraft Cataclysm. Is that what it was? Yeah.
Yeah.
We saw that.
Star Wars. Isn't just Blizzard.
No. I'm saying we saw the same thing with other MMO releases when they have the beta and people live stream them playing it.
Do we have
I
the
can't
footage?
believe you're not excited about this, Glenn. I can't believe.
So, Glenn, while we're queuing up the footage, why are you not excited about this particular game?
My brother worked for LucasArts for a couple of years.
Have you been Lucased out?
I've been Lucased out.
Is that what you're saying? You don't want to see droids running around? And
it's because he look, when he worked there, he was so hardcore into everything Star Wars that at one point Thanksgiving actually got in a huge fight because I was like, dude, you don't have to keep pimping it out. It's not like George Lucas is sharing, a cut of the revenue with you on this. Like, you just work for the company, man. So it was a little overdone. That's all I'm saying. Just
what's funny is you and I think we're just sine and cosine right here, just not quite match, because I am just coming out of my trough of Darth sellout hating, and it's like, this is a new hope. This is a chance for me to fall in love with Star Wars all over again after the utter betrayal of the whole prequels experience from my perspective. And for me, as a kid, I was into Star Wars, and then I was too cool for Star Wars. Then I got into Star Wars. I read 20 of the expanded universe novels, and I was super high. Then the prequels came out, and Lucas took a dump on my childhood. And then, here's me right now. I want so bad to experience that joy again, and I think BioWare is the company to do it. And this is the format that I can experience it all again.
You know what I'll admit? Every couple months, I go on Wikipedia and I read the synopses of the Star Wars expanded universe novels because I kind of like to know what's going on with the future timeline.
Did you read any of those books? I mean,
I read the Zahn trilogy.
The Zahn trilogy. Did you read the two books that he wrote later on?
The three. That was, and then I was just like, I don't have the time to commit.
After those three, years later,
I know he wrote two more. Yeah.
It doesn't look like we have the video. Sorry about that, guys. But it's online somewhere.
It's online
if you do
somewhere.
Something crazy.
We can't tell you exactly where
because nobody wants to get sued here.
Yes, but you could find it. So that was a lot of setup.
Set up for the retro. We were setting you up for retro.
We're setting up for retro.
For Police Quest.
Yes, Police Quest in honor of L.A. Noire. It seemed fitting to make our retro pick of the week. One of the games that really,
and we have video of this.
Yes, and that helped start it all with
oh my gosh,
with
I'm
the
in
adventure
7th grade
games.
just looking at that. Bring that sweet video back up.
Yeah, check it out.
Gosh,
That is a $60 million game. This is LA Noir. No, this is not LA Noir. This is Police Quest.
Back in the day, oh man, let me tell you, I had an Apple IIe and it wouldn't run this game, and I was so bummed because I bought a copy of it. It's software, etc.
We just
my
got
dad,
that you can use.
This was when my dad bought a PC, and I was so stoked because it had EGA graphics, which is what we're seeing here, instead of CGA 4-color graphics, because EGA, of course, could display 16 colors simultaneously compared to CGA's laughable paltry 4 colors.
Got some risque stuff on this video here. We got men showering in the background. I mean, some pixelated stuff here.
Oh man, I spent so much time though playing this game. I remember using school computer. My school's library, they had a computer that could play this, and I was a library TA, so I was able to play Sierra games. And this was one of the first ones I played from start to finish.
Well, do you think that
you remember how annoying it was? Like you went out to your car and you had to read the manual that said you had to walk around your car before you could get into it because that was proper police procedure. In other words, the game ended if you didn't.
What about the second one? Was it the second one where you actually had to maintain like cleaning your gun? Like you had to keep your gun maintained.
Kind of a mini game out of it, at least, right?
Yeah.
I remember at the end you had to go down to the sewers and you die of methane gas poisoning.
That's Police Quest 2: The Vengeance?
Yeah.
Due to the fact that graphics weren't exactly what they are now, do you think these games were better stories than they are now? Or do you think, what do you think, as you were saying, LA Noir seems like a new thing for stories. Do you think back then they had to try harder, or you just had limited scope here?
I think that it was still novel. I'm trying to think of, we could probably, and we'll do this, we'll do some theme episodes where we, try and count down sort of maybe the top 10 video game storylines. And that's the thing, though, is that when you think back, though, to a lot of these titles, I mean, I think this was back before the storyline was really like the gripping factor.
It was back when the very case of the medium was all it took. The novelty of the medium in which you were telling a story was all it took. I mean, for example, in the beginning, if you listen to the original stories told during radio dramas in the early days of radio, they're super elementary, goofy stuff. And eventually radio developed its own format and found its own voice. Same thing with the early days of television. Same thing with the early days of cinema. The novelty of the medium is what takes precedence at first. They're like, look, we've got colors and it's a sunrise, that kind of thing. And eventually it comes to a point where you need to tell the story once you found your voice. And this is clearly the early days of storytelling computing. And I think that we are seeing the maturation. I think that LA Noir is the great-great-grandson of the Police Quest series. And I think it's an exceptional exceptional to see the development, not only from a technical perspective, but from the fact, by the way, there he is. He's walking all the way around his car. Yeah. See?
Do we have any footage? Is there any footage on YouTube of Police Quest 2? Or there was...
I'll go look.
Okay. Because we could show a little evolution. I remember now the series did evolve with... there was Police Quest 2. And the first Police Quest did get a remake in the early 90s with 256 color VGA graphics.
Yeah. And it was the exact same story, just told with upsampled everything, right?
I mean, basically, Sierra at that time was doing a little better in terms of their distribution, their success of other games like King's Quest, Space Quest, Leisure Suit Larry, and there was a wider audience. So they contemporized it in the early 90s. Although in 88, they did do Police Quest 2, which was a little more involved. That was the one with the gunman.
See, there it is. It's all Miami Vice looking. Look at the difference from Police Quest 1 to Police Quest 2. It is so fascinating. You can tell that this has been scanned. Isn't that one of the Sierra co-founders? Isn't that the husband of the two?
Wanted for excessive verbosity.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing to see.
We just got caught up looking at it. It actually is fast. It's like, wow.
It is. I mean,
things have changed a lot.
Let's just keep the evolution going. Can you see, Alex, if there's 3 and on there?
Well, and what's funny, and forgive me if I'm going to get mixed up here, but Police Quest became SWAT series, didn't it?
It became what now?
It became SWAT.
Oh.
Yeah. Which became a first-person shooter series where it's like SWAT Las Vegas or something. I forget what it is, but it's like it became a first-person shooter series.
Which is weird. It's a weird evolution when you think about that, because I'd forgotten that. I forgot that it had become that until I was looking at it, because I remember the SWAT games, I remember Police Quest, but it was that weird in between, because 3 came out, and 3 I think was probably the most. It was the one that I remember was the most sort of mainstream that
they
like,
used
a
a
lot of
spray
people were
paint
playing.
brush.
Yeah, well, it was 1991, man.
That was the hotness.
as was the style of the time.
I wore an onion on my belt.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is wow, holy cow, man, such memories. That's bringing me way back. Did you have a favorite of all of the Sierra Online children?
Well, as a kid, I remember thinking Leisure Suit Larry was going to be the coolest, most forbidden game that you could possibly play.
It was in every game magazine.
Yeah,
like, what's that?
You're like, oh, it's the same. Because as a kid, you're just like, ooh,
that must be good.
Yeah, that's got to be. It's going to be like 16 color, like TNA. Yeah, it's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, there wasn't the same kind of proliferation of internet and porn that way.
Yeah, well, and it's weird that remember Leisure Suit Larry had the age verification where they just asked you sort of trivia questions that they assumed only an adult would know. That was their
stuff
age
about
verification.
like Richard Nixon. If you even knew who Richard Nixon was, you could get past that. But it's like at the age of 7th grade, I had to try like 8 times before I got through, and I felt so incredibly naughty, and I didn't understand half the stuff I'm seeing.
And it was like, oh my god, you can buy condoms in this game,
whatever that is.
It was. But the thing is, though, Leisure Suit Larry, it's a testament to the series in the sense how the humor and naughtiness of it sort of overshadowed. Because I don't remember a lot about the gameplay with that. I remember that it was sort of titillating the idea that it's like, oh, you get to get in a hot tub with a girl and do all this stuff. But I don't remember really spending as much time. I don't remember being as compelled to play through that. Whereas Police Quest, I would say Space Quest was probably my favorite.
I was a huge fan.
And tell me if you're on the same page with me, but when it comes to Space Quest, the moments I remember the most from that game are the tongue-in-cheek jokes. The fact that you would walk into the bar and it would be the Cantina Band from Star Wars playing, the Blues Brothers and some spaced out version.
Yeah, no, I love that stuff. The King's Quest never spoke to me as much.
I fell so in love and so far down the black hole of Sierra Online. I played every single one of them. I played King's Quest 1 through 4. I was so in love with everything they could put out. I even used to pay $2 per hint to call the 1-900 line for hints from time to time.
Remember the Sierra Network? Remember that? When Leo and I used to do On Computers, the Sierra Network was one of the sponsors. Or we had like a chat room presence. Remember that? They had like the online games. They had.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was. I mean,
I remember also they flirted with you could buy hint books that you could use one of those yes or no pens to reveal the hidden stuff on there.
They were such a great company in terms of pushing and sort of the evolution of gaming. Especially on the PC. I mean, when you look at what they were doing, they were one of the first. They were one of the best, and now it's a brand that's a subsidiary of. I mean, isn't
it's just a brand folded in. I think they got was it CEC or something? I forget what it is, but Ascendant Technologies or something like that.
Yeah, and it's just a shame to see that these titles aren't around more. They did a Leisure Suit Larry a few years ago, but it wasn't.
I believe wasn't Valve part of the Sierra?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Because wasn't Half-Life originally?
Yeah, in fact, I remember the first E3 that I ever went to was 15 years ago, and we drove 14 hours overnight all the way out to Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh God,
we did a bunch of stuff in the expo hall. That was the first or second time that I met Richard Garriott, and I remember hopping on a shuttle bus going over to the Ascendant. I think it was CEC at the time for the Sierra. The Sierra had their whole own area. And I went and I saw a demo. I met Steve Bond, who still is with Valve to this very day. And keep in mind, back at this time, I'm a 20-year-old kid with bright green hair, and I was so impressed. Out of everyone that I went to, the folks manning the booth at this little place I'd never heard of called Valve, showing off the technology for especially the artificial intelligence and telling the story of Half-Life. It really stuck with me, and I swear to God, right now, downstairs, I still have Gabe Newell's business card from 15 years ago downstairs.
That's awesome. And people in the chat room are saying that the retro gaming segment should be a feature of every show, and it will be. This is definitely something we're going to do every week without the controls, talking about retro gaming. Talking about sort of the stories from our past PC and console geekdom, and the games that matter to us. But I mean, there's so much. I mean, Sierra. That's why I didn't want to make it just specifically the Sierra adventure games, because I feel like we're going to cover this in much greater depth in future shows.
Of course.
But with L.A. Noire, Police Police Quest is the grandfather.
Well, in fact, as you were describing L.A. Noire, I didn't want to make a big deal about it at the time, but in the chat room, somebody said, "So it's basically Police Quest, huh?"
And so,
I was just like,
but,
you have no
but
idea
it's a $60 million version of Police Quest.
It really is. It really is.
Even if you're a PC gamer and you're like, "Oh, they're talking about a console game. I don't know if I'm interested." It's like, come on, just for the sheer old school evolution of that, L.A. Noire should be of interest to you, because that's essentially.
I got to tell you, I think a lot of gaming has evolved beyond platform, especially because we see different versions of different games coming out for different platforms. I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that as kids, we all had very limited resources, and our parents were only going to buy us either a TurboGrafx 16 or a Genesis, but not both. But of course, I think I think not only are we in a different space now, but I think gaming is in a different space now, where it's more unique when somebody bothers to make a game exclusive for one console or another.
Yeah, definitely.
Have we received any user feedback or kills of the week or anything of the week?
People have not sent in any kills of the week yet.
Shame on you.
Yeah, you should. People got to send in kill shot of the week, glitch of the week, spoiler of the week.
We might have to set up a video explaining how to record those things.
Definitely. And I'll be looking for some more. Had L.A. Noire not.
We should.
So
why don't we next time do a quick tutorial on how to use fraps?
We can do that.
Sure. I mean, just so that they can, whatever.
Or just at least a link on the show notes or something like that eventually, so people can do this and get in the habit of recording what they're doing.
And if you have, I'm sorry, Brian.
I'm gonna say, dang it. I'm gonna see if I can find it. I don't know if there's any remnants of it left online. Hold on, give me 1 second here.
Or the lazy man's way of just taking your smartphone and recording something.
Which I love watching.
Which you can do. I mean, it's one way to do it. You don't have to worry about copy protection and nonsense like that.
I mean, let me plug it out that first off, obviously the email address twitgameshow@gmail.com, or some people have been getting at me with questions on Twitter throughout the week. I've had some good questions from people. I'm
Glenn Rubenstein.
At Glenn Rubenstein on Twitter. Feel free to follow me, hit me up. During the week, I'm trying to tweet about what I'm playing, what's going on, kind of give sort of some preview of what we're going to be talking about. Obviously, this past week was a little L.A. Noire heavy.
Go figure.
Yeah, go figure. And that's the thing. When we do a big game, I don't know. I mean, obviously, it's not always as essential to play a game start to finish, but I think that when it's something that we want to talk in depth, that's deserving of talking in depth, me at least, I feel just for pure gamer
you have to have
cred,
a full opinion.
I feel that sometimes it's necessary to. And it's the thing that I always fear is I'm going to be in a conversation, somebody could be like, "Yeah, but what'd you think about the ending?" And I'm like, "Oh, I
can't talk about it.
I'm not that far yet."
So I can't find it, but somewhere I had a video that I actually recorded up myself from it must have been 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago. I was playing City of Villains, and one of the classes I was playing was a mastermind, where you get these henchmen that you can make appear, and there's a limited kind of script library that you could do. You could make them do different kind of emotes, and so I created this whole notepad, must have been 100 lines long, to where all I had to do is keep hitting 000 in order to keep queuing up the next emote. And I would actually go to the richest areas of the city, and I would have them play out scenes from movies. I would actually have them act and shout at each other, and we had them recreate scenes from The Wrath of Khan or from Pulp Fiction or whatever. And then at the end, I would beg for in-game money. And I recorded a video of it. I got to find it for you guys, but I will definitely show it to you next week.
That was the teaser for the video.
That was the teaser for the
One day we'll see that video.
So let's get to a little bit of viewer mail that we have here. So one thing we've talked about, and we haven't talked about today so much in the brainstorming elements of what we're doing here, as the show is still evolving, is one component we'll have once the show launches will be a multiplayer element, be it a LAN party, some online gaming.
And it'll be after the show.
Yeah, and it'll be after the show. It'll be like a separate segment, a live segment that'll be in studio. Jim Hitchell sent in, or Jim the Fly sent in a suggestion. Essentially, he says, at his local arcade, they do something called 8 on the Break. The local arcade's called 8 on the Break. They have something called the Break. That's weird. We'll just say the Break-a-thon. It's like marathon, or Alon. I can't pronounce it correctly. Like a breakdown, which is a 10-game tournament over many different games: 2 music, 2 classic, 2 pinball, 2 fighter, puzzle fighter, and a surprise game. People get points at the end of each game depending on how they finished. It's sort of like the World's Strongest Man contest and an overall champion at the end. So the idea that maybe in studio as a segment we could set up sort of like this gaming relay to have people compete playing a bunch of different games in quick succession.
That's an interesting idea to see.
A competition.
How versatile are you at gaming?
Exactly. We'll take them from Street Fighter to DDR to some Bomberman and then Tetris.
That actually sounds great. Actually.
Yeah, just in quick succession. Just having
all
people,
at the same time.
Yeah, exactly.
Can't you play Street Fighter 2 while playing DDR? We should do that.
So I think that's the thing. And depending on what's available, I think we're going to try and mix it up with having physical stuff that we can do. Maybe we can even, when we have listeners or guests, having them involved in the competition. And then
guys, I found it.
Breaking news.
Breaking news.
So
Brian
sorry.
has found his video.
I'm so sorry. You have no idea how excited I am here. This is okay. So first of all, what I would do is I'd have all my henchmen show up, and then I would, make announcements that the performance was about to begin. I don't know if you can see here, but my henchmen are named Michael Knight, Jay Brushwood, B.A. Baracus, Richard Simmons, and another Richard Simmons.
Child of the 80s.
But anyway, so this is the way they would act out, and I overlaid it with the audio from Pulp Fiction.
Go
What
for it.
Marcellus Wallace looks like.
It's gonna have swears in it.
What? Say what again? Say what again? I dare you. I double dare you, motherfucker.
Oh,
Say
wait.
What? Black on. He's bald. Does he look like a
What?
bitch? What? Does he look like a bitch? No! Then why you say-
Okay, so I'm gonna pause it
You
right
better
there.
stop it right there.
But they would act the whole thing out. Then they would sit down on their knees and they would hold up cups to beg for everyone for money, dude. It was I actually thought I was opening the cleaned one. I actually made one with a beep on there, but
And that wasn't it.
too.
That was not it. Definitely.
Yeah.
So
Sorry
if you
about
have a video you'd like to send in with preferably no profanity.
Yeah, we'd like rated E for everyone. I just don't make fun of adoption.
Yeah, clearly.
That's right. Unless you want news coverage,
Right. So
In fact,
yeah.
yes, make fun of adoption.
Please send
and
us
send your video.
all kinds of content, but rated E content.
Wow. I just want to go back for a second. If you're outraged at something in a game, why is your first instinct, I'm going to call my local news station?
I have no idea.
Like,
you're just causing more attention on the thing.
Imagine-
She doesn't know what's going on. She's right on. She's like in the shot, man. These are horrible things that were repeated. You know,
you're
these were.
making this big media sensation out of it.
Yeah.
Oh, God. I feel bad for what that girl's going to have to go through at school.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. You can share this video around everywhere now. So, congratulations, kid. You're viral. We're sorry.
It's a
about
form
that.
of abuse. CPS should get involved.
Maybe. And that's how the show will devolve into going right back. And so, any more feedback from the listeners?
That
or
was
viewers?
my favorite one that I saw. I like that idea. Someone had an idea for the opening that would like to see Brian doing some low rent production values, reenacting scenes from classic video games.
Sonic Boom.
Yes.
Dude, I'm so down with
He's
that.
already- he's
How
already in
about
costume.
42?
That's perfect.
How about 42? Would like to see some good low rent production. Have you dress up like Link? Have you dress up? Yeah.
It just
Dude,
has
I'll
it in for
tell you
Brian.
what,
What's
Even
that?
if you know what, if there's one thing that this audience is really good at, it's creating like really engaging, hilarious content on the fly. Especially if we don't mind it being shabby. But I'd love to see original videos of just bizarre, mashup jokes, like, throw together, Link encountering the TWiT studios, or Ryu beating up Leo Laporte or something. I don't know. I mean, it's like, I think it'd be hilarious.
There's a Photoshop contest that will be happening during the show. At the end of the show, we will put up that image of the fireball deflecting Leo Laporte.
And if anyone has any suggestions, if anyone, any musicians or mashup artists out there have some ideas as far as video game music, I've been meaning to put something together, but if someone else wants to do it, that would be awesome, because we don't even have any bed music or bumper music.
So would you
currently.
recommend they upload it online and then they have like a
Yeah,
flash
they send
player
a
for
link.
you?
Yeah, they could just send it to twitgameshow@gmail.com or tweet at me about it. I mean, we want to hear some, some interesting stuff that matches up some video game sounds, some interesting ideas. I mean, I've got some music and stuff that I've done, but I just haven't had the time to create something original for this. But if anyone else wants to participate, this is.
You want to give it a shot? This is your chance.
Yeah, definitely. And we've also had some other good emails from people, some even potential guests, some indie game developers that have emailed us that we'll be having on the show once we're more up and running. Some PC indie game developers. Also, Pardon me. Also, Joshua Caleb, who does the In Retrospection podcast and blog, will be a guest in the coming weeks. And, we'll be definitely covering more retro. He'll be someone great to have on for that. And we're just going to be sort of taking it, week to week in terms of what the top stories are, what the top games are, while we evolve this format. Brian and I are going to be at E3 in June. We'll be having coverage from there during the week, and then we'll be having a recap that week. Did you get it sorted out with your assistant as far as the accommodation so we can have our meet space?
Yeah. Actually,
meet space encounter.
I already told him that I'm going to room with you, and then he'll have the other place. And we may have another person rooming with him in the other room as well. We'll see about that.
Okay. Cool. And this is funny. Frederick Frost just sent in that we should have profanity on the show.
Well, we did.
Yeah, we did.
So thanks for that suggestion, because we took it to heart.
That was the tough thing, man. I was trying to find the for LA Noire stuff. Let me just, not to harp too much on that. That's a salty language game. So if anyone out there is sort of picking that up, it was very hard to find clips of that didn't have nudity or graphic violence or just some hardcore swearing action. Words.
Let me tell you, dude. I mean, the whole show is going to be a blast, but if you want to see passion, I guarantee you every retro segment, because I'm seeing the stuff people are suggesting in the chat room, so many of these I cannot wait to talk about and the experiences that we had with them.
Definitely. I think that's the thing. I think that, it'll be a part of every show, because there's so much that's there, and we talked about this last week, but in terms of Brian, your experiences in video gaming in the past, and definitely with mine, and I've been in the industry since 1990, so there's a lot of any sort of behind the scenes stuff that I can share based on what the stories and the gossip was at the time. I'll definitely be down to do, and I'm sure at some point I'll reveal who the Full Motion Video Company was that I was talking about earlier.
That could be a big lead up to that.
Yeah,
there'll be 6 episodes.
Maybe I can get the guy on. Maybe I can get the former president and CEO.
That would be
very interesting.
Yeah. That would be awesome.
See if they want to talk to me about what they were thinking exactly at the time, because I'm sure people out there would like to hear it. But cool. So we're all about ready to wrap? We good?
I think so. Other than more feedback would be great. Give us an email at twitgameshow@gmail.com.
Or hit me up on Twitter.
Yeah, at Glenn, is it Rubenstein? Rubenstein.
I don't have a preference.
Okay.
I have to be flexible.
Then either one. Glenn with 2 N's, though, so find him on Twitter that way.
Rubenstein when he's the scientist. It's Rubenstein when he's the creation.
That's good. I like that.
You got to put that as your Twitter bio.
Yeah.
Send us your feedback. If you like the way the new segments worked, that's let us know. If you didn't, let us know. Pretty much, we're trying to figure out the format of the show. And another episode will be next week.
Next
after
Friday.
TNT, with Tom Merritt sitting here, and I don't know where I'll be, but you'll be here. Glenn will be here.
I'll be
Brian
here.
will be
Brian
here.
will be here.
And it's going to be great.
And hopefully you'll be here. Thanks for listening.
Do we have a thing at the end? We're at the controls.
Yeah, we'll see you at the control. Which is completely right. And that was, what somebody had said, which was interesting. Maybe for the review segment, I just want to get this quickly. Someone suggested in the chat room that At the Controls should be like at the movies, in the idea that maybe we should have 2 reviewers who have played the game. So it's not just me rambling on about LA Noire, but having sort of a point-counterpoint, just to get sort of the second opinion, having that sort of face-off and discussing the game.
Yeah, that also looks like that's part of what the wild card section, the face-off thing could be. It really is about the amount of time anybody has at any given week.
Totally.
And availability, and is there a network outage somewhere? Little things that might be out of the control of the normal person.
Yes.
So hopefully, but that's a great idea. I like that too. And also, I think that'd be a good way to do the intro, just to show why is it called At the Controls? Oh, I get it.
Yeah.
You just go up to an old TV with an old console, an Atari 2600. You walk right up to it and see 2 kids sitting there on the floor.
Oh, that's good.
With joysticks.
Like okay, well, then going with that theme, until next time, everyone, we will see you next week at the controls. If we had music, the music would play right now. It would be a very smooth transition. There we go.
Recycled music. Wait, this is very familiar. I've almost heard this before. So that's pretty much the way it would go. Did you want the news segments to be faster? Did you want them to be with as much opinion?
Well, how long did we go? Did anyone time it?
We were 1 hour and 16 minutes.
Shut up. That was fast. Well, since we sat down, or since we
said we were starting. Yeah.
Well, then no. It's like what's funny is at the time I thought we were moving super fast, but obviously we ran just about right. That was awesome.
We were going for that, or I thought we were going for like an hour.
Well, I know we're going for an hour, but we could have tightened up. We were
it could have been a little tighter. That's the thing. I could have done another hour on LA Noire.
How long did we go? 7 hours.
Yeah.
The first campaign
and it was great. It was great for me because having not played the game, I genuinely was interested in your experience. So it worked out
So when he
well.
does play the game, he will not care. That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
Shadow Tiger in the chat room is asking. So yeah, so the idea will be that it'll be we'll spend around an hour on the show and then we'll have like an hour gaming event after once the show launches. So
and I can see in the actual released podcast that if anything truly epic happens during the gaming part, that would all
we'll
show
have
up.
Alex edit it and put it in because that'll make him happy.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing is that if there's enough demand for the after segment to be released as a podcast, then that's possible, I'm sure.
No, I would say highlights should show up after the credits, where it's like the show's over, the credits go, and then it's like you get anywhere from 3 minutes to 15 minutes of whatever happened in the next hour.
All things within reason for our editors will happen.
So how do we know what the highlights are, or how will the editor know what the highlights are?
No, and
that's because the people who
we
experience
break glow sticks right around them. That's what we do. I'll be walking around when I notice a highlight. I'll put like a hula hoop over them, so then you'll be able to see.
All right,
this is the highlight moment.
And then we'll have a big clipboard with a spreadsheet that we can mark the time.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna need a tablet. I'm gonna need a stylus. I'm gonna need some hula hoops.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree.
And maybe some glow rods or something. Yeah.
And no, I mean, we'll figure out kind of with what works and what doesn't. I mean, the thing is, content-wise, I know there's stuff we didn't cover this week. Some people in the chat room actually mentioned it because I wanted to get to The Witcher 2 and Fable 3 this week. And I think that's going to be the key is how we're going to be able to cover when there's a big game week. I mean, I think next week we'll have a little bit of coverage of those, sort of get it in there. I mean, I think the key is going to be figuring out how we're going to, when we have release-heavy weeks, cram in solid coverage within.
Well, and then that's when it's going to take policing from someone like Iyaz or Tom to just and it's time for the next thing or whatever. The good news is that between everyone here, especially, I mean, look at how easily we were able to fill the time on the retro segment because we have rich histories and lots of stories associated with the gaming and certainly a lot of powerful opinions about how we feel about new releases and classic releases. So I honestly don't think we're going to have trouble filling the hour. And I felt really good about the pacing as far as moving from story to story.
With the retro gaming thing, though, like that could end up going into so many different games, and it could kind of spin out of control.
Oh, definitely. It's going to be hard to sort of keep it on.
Right.
I mean,
so you have to be like, okay, like let's just stick to this one game, or like maybe these two, and that way the show doesn't go like extraordinarily long because we're reminiscing too long. It could just, as fun as that is to discuss, I just mean from the show standpoint.
One thing, and MDTA UK said, and we could do special one-off shows for single game releases if it's a big. I mean, for instance, like Portal 2, I would have done an entire Portal 2 show, like a separate edition that was just Portal 2. I think for some games it almost warrants dedicated podcast.
They're monstrous, releases like Portal 2, LA Noire. Actually, I think would be.
Well, I think that's the thing, and I think long term.
What about Duke Nukem Forever?
I'll believe that when it ships.
I'll do it.
Dude,
13
it's only
year.
like 3 weeks out. I already told you. My brother worked on that game.
I know a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy who said he saw a developer working on the game.
I could show you unreleased footage that my brother worked on right now when he made his demo reel when he got fired from 3D Realms.
And long term, so the audience knows. I mean, obviously, if there's enough demand, and hopefully, if the release podcast once we got these beta shows enough. I mean, ultimately in the long term, I think it's been discussed and talked about. If the audience is there enough to demand it, would be great to do a console show and a PC show. But to start with, we're gonna try and just make this
let it grow organically, and then see how it goes.
And I think that's the thing. And I think that one thing that is true is yes, we should try and make sure to keep things at least moving to the point where that someone's going to feel like there's something for them. I think that's the retro segment. I think the retro segment, I think, is where there's going to be something for everyone.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of, I remember that.
Yeah.
We already have Photoshops of Leo deflecting a fireball.
Can we... You want to put it up? There. Is it burning through him, or what's going on there?
No, I think he's stopping it with his powers of stopping fireballs.
It's a good start.
It's interesting to see in the chat room, there is sort of a split viewpoint, I think, between some people that are says they're optional, says, games as games, tear down the Berlin Wall. I think it's interesting to see sort of the remnants of the division between PC and console, because Because it used to be stronger, I think.
Yeah, it used to be,
and it did. It used to be very strong, but I don't think it's that strong. Maybe it's the audience that we're talking to now. I mean, look.
Well, definitely people in the chat room. I would say probably the balance is a little more PC games, just given the platform.
You think so?
Yeah, I would say that. I mean, certainly anybody watching right now is at least tech savvy enough to either watch it on their computer or on their Roku box or on their 360, or whatever. But I'm going to say that certainly, and that's a good problem to have if the audience skews towards PC, because it's very rare that you encounter that bias. But also, I think in general, gamers have matured to a level to where we can afford to buy more than one console at a time. I think a lot of the division early on was because our parents would only buy one of them for Christmas, and you had to pick a team. Are you Sega or Nintendo?
Because adults now are buying game systems. It's not like back then. Like, please, come on. And I was like, yeah, I'll buy it.
And Cake Wolf in the chat room though had my favorite piece of feedback, which is he's not a gamer but enjoys the show. Which
that's all we ask.
That's the number one thing.
Absolutely.
We're gonna quick almost poll right now. A lot of PCs, a lot of PC gamers are here. A few PS3. One says Mac PC, which is even weirder.
No, that's awesome. Look, can we announce?
I didn't say bad.
Yes,
I just said weird.
PC means Mac and PC.
We finally have Valve has just issued a press release.
It's made me relieved. It says something.
That PCs and Macs have finally come together. I proudly include Macs as PC gamers. You guys are PC gamers because you're playing PC games the proper way, with a mouse and a keyboard, the way every, grown-up
red-blooded Wazning people.
Yes, that's exactly right. Oh, you know what? And in fact, actually, there's a fantastic. I'm going to find Escapist Magazine did a thing, consoles, arcades. I just wanted this was one thing that I wanted to talk about. There we go. Consoles are the new coin-op. I kind of want to just jump it forward. It's probably going to make an ad here. Yeah, dang it. Ironically for LA Noire. Crazy enough.
But targeted ad. That's a good ad right there. Then
can't get away from it.
Extra Credits did a very compelling little piece on how consoles are the new coin-op. And there's only about 30 seconds of it I wanted to share with you guys to get your opinion on it. And I'm waiting for this ad to finish so I can show it to you. But here we go, right about here. Wait. PlayStation.
Hey, guys, we got an exciting announcement today. The more variety we get, the more like... You might already have an idea of where we're going to go with this, and you might not like it, but just hear me out. It's not as bad as you think. In fact, the only way it could end up as bad as you think is if we deny this change is coming or try to fight it. You know what? I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. First, let's take a look at gaming history for a minute. The arcade industry was once the dominant force in gaming. It's what pushed the boundaries and brought in the real money. The arcades were where you went to see the latest graphics and hear the greatest sound. Arcades were where the big budget games were to be found. But by the PlayStation era, home consoles started to be able to rival the graphical and processing power delivered by the arcade machines. So to stay competitive, arcade manufacturers started turning out games that required gimmicky controllers or provided more ride-like experiences, the kind of games that consoles couldn't possibly deliver at the time. But even with this new direction, arcades became more and more of a niche compared to the more convenient, easier to use, and over the long run, comparatively cheaper console gaming platforms. Consoles took over the market, and our old arcades are little more than a fond memory. If you look at the console gaming world of today, it's impossible not to see the parallels. Right now, all of the big-budget, bleeding-edge technology projects are released for the console. But as this technology becomes more and more expensive to produce, it's becoming harder and harder to turn a profit. And at the same time, we see a more convenient, cheaper solution with a better business model on the horizon. Even if we just look at the last year, think about how far web-based and Facebook games have come. We've gone from Warbook being the height of interactivity and technology to Nanostar Siege or Backyard Monsters. The level of graphical technology has gone from Apple II to PlayStation in a year, and it's only going to keep barreling forward. The same is clearly true of the app. The idea of the self-contained, auto-installing digital download executable is taking hold across the board. And even for a device as simple as the iPhone, we've moved from Undercroft, which James loved, to Infinity Blade in a mere 2 years. Simultaneously, services like OnLive have begun to hint at the possibility of streaming game content for any device that can connect to the internet through true cloud gaming. Moreover, devices which can connect to the internet are becoming more and more commonplace. Smartphones are becoming ubiquitous. Tablet PCs and netbooks are becoming easier to use and plummeting in price. Devices of this type are becoming more powerful and more accessible with each iteration. Within a decade, we'll be able to play the latest games with the best graphics, web resident or streaming on our tablets. We'll play them with our Bluetooth controllers or native on touchscreens. And when we're at home, we'll wirelessly sync them to our TV screens or play them on TV screens, which are really just giant tablets. We'll be able to take our library of games to the coffee shop and always have them on hand when the lunch bell rings. They'll be on something we already own for all of our day-to-day computing needs, and they'll have newer monetization models that are better for the player, the developer, and the publisher. Maybe not the retail distributor so much, but I think I can live with that. So, what does this mean for the console? It means that they'll end up seeming as modern and convenient as the Laserdisc or the telex machine. They're going to be seen like the wristwatch, providing an
Anyway, I don't want to play the whole thing, but go to the Escapist magazine and look for it. Consoles are the new coin-op. What do you think? Do you agree with that, or do you see that vision? Do you agree?
To an extent. I mean,
when I want to go play a console game, I go to your house. No, I miss the arcade. I miss that experience where because you had like competition, a lot more trash talking, and it was.
I miss putting my quarter up on the machine. Yeah, for next. Yeah,
that was the best because you're like, I'm playing Street Fighter now.
Yeah, exactly. No, I miss those elements, but you know what I don't miss though? I remember very
Being
specifically.
out of coins?
No, I mean I remember going to an arcade like in 1990. Playing like, what was it, Golden Gun? It was like a James Bond. No, Sly Spy. That's what it was. It's like a James Bond knockoff.
Spy. I
remember playing that, and I remember being bummed out. I was like, I'm going to go home now and play my Nintendo. They can't do something that looks this good.
That's true. But they're really kind of close. I mean, remember Neo Geo was that one?
I had a Neo Geo. I remember it was like $1,000 console with $200
$400 games, whatever they were, and like they were the exact same games. The games were also the size of like these screens.
Yeah, they were like a VHS box essentially.
Well, let me tell you the part of this little speech that spoke to me the most was when he was talking about games on the iPad and how fast you're able to watch the graphics advance. For example, it's weird now what games I'm into. Ticket to Ride just came out on the iPad. Have either of you guys played that board game, Ticket to Ride?
I haven't.
No, I heard about that though.
It's awesome. It's awesome. There are two great board games that you should experience in a video game format because the video game format is better than the actual board game format, and that's Settlers of Catan and Ticket to Ride. Ticket to Ride I've been playing for years on the Xbox 360. Now it's out on the iPad. I made 3 freaking hours on the elliptical, totally vanished, playing Ticket to Ride on my iPad. It was amazing.
All right, guys.
And I'll tell you, I'm looking forward to
I've got to play Spoil Sport right now because I got to be party pooper. You know, people have to go home and do things with their lives now. The rest of the people here. Well, some of the people. Alex doesn't know what I'm talking about, but some people do. I know I have to go and move my stuff out of an apartment into a house, so I need to go.
No.
Someone in the other room was applauding.
I can't hear you, Iyaz. I'm getting a phone call. Somebody wants. Oh, you want to play Ticket to Ride? Oh, okay. I'll get on my iPad right now.
I'm sorry to be that guy, but we will be here next week after TNT. Send in your comments. On Twitter, on email. We don't have a voicemail, but soon something. Yes, you can boo me all you want. It's my fault.
Bye, guys.
Bye. See you next week.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you.
What's coming up on the reruns?
Reruns. We got TNT and Windows Weekly.
Coming up is TNT and Windows Weekly.
Past previous day stuff.
And then other days stuff, I'm being told. So that's going to be fun. Because today's Tech News today was interesting because if you want more Schwood, there's more Schwood there.
Too much wood.
I'm not the game over screen.
All right, we done?
We're
yes.
done.
So long, Brian. And everyone else.
Another TWiT is leaving the building.